So it's my pleasure to introduce, okay, sorry, it's going to be Francisco Garcia Moran.
It's perfect.
Okay, who is Chief IT Advisor of the European Commission. And in this role, he advises European Commission services, other EU institutions, and member states on digital policies, e-government, IT management, and IT security. He is my neighbor, actually. He is currently visiting scholar at UC Berkeley, carrying out a study on the future of digital public services, which will be an input to the EU e-government strategy 2016-2020 within the framework of the Digital Single Market Strategy, which was approved by the European Commission on May 6, 2015. So in short, he is the expert of the European Commission, which is challenging to be. So thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, thank you very much to Citrus and to INRIA and the EIT for inviting me here. Particularly, I want to thank my colleagues in DigiConnect because they have facilitated my life by giving me a big input for the presentation. So if you find that this presentation has any merit, it's their merit. And if you think that this presentation has any issue, it's my fault. So with that. I have a bunch of slides. What I have done is to highlight the keywords in red so that you don't have to read a lot. But I will try to go fast so that I will leave some questions, some room for questions afterwards. So, first thing first, provided that, okay. So, for those who do not know how the European Union works, those are the four main players. So, in the first place is the European Commission because we propose legislation. Then is the legislative authorities, so the Parliament that represent the citizens and the Council that represent the governments, and then the member states that are really the main players because they have to implement the legislation and they have to follow it up. So, apart from the role of proposing legislation, that is as such very important, we are a funding agency because we are running programs and we fund the programs. In addition to that, we are a capacity builder because with the money of the programs or with specific budgets, we are going to fund infrastructure or we are going to fund kind of associated activities to facilitate the implementation of the program in support of the policies. Probably you know that on November 1st, 2014, the new College of Commissioners took office. The new president was endorsed by the European Parliament in July, and there are 28 commissioners, of course, and Jean-Claude Juncker, who is the new president, was the former Prime Minister of Luxembourg. And there are three commissioners that are involved in the topic that we are dealing with today, is digital data. In the first place, a vice president in charge of the digital single market, and then two commissioners, one for research and the other one for the digital economy and society. But they are not working alone. They have to work with the rest of the colleagues in order to push forward the policies. But they are the main players and the initiators. So, what is the political framing for everything we are dealing with today is the digital single market, as Valerie said. The strategy was approved on May 6th, and this strategy is one of the 10 points that was included into the program of the President of the Commission when he went to the Parliament to get the endorsement to become the President and to form the college. Basically, what the digital single market is trying to do is that the four freedoms that are the basis of the treaties are respected not only in the physical world, but also in the online world. It's as simple as that. So, the digital single market has three pillars. One is access, the second one is environment, and the third one is economy and society. And within this one, there is a full chapter called data economy. And the topics I'm going to speak about will fall into this specific section. We consider data extremely important. So, what is the action out of the more or less 16 actions that are planned into the digital single market strategy that deals with data? So, all that is encapsulated in a specific action called free flow of data, and has several aspects that have something to do with data, but there is something very important that relates to the topic of the conference today. So, on one side is tackling the restriction of movement of data, but particularly tackling the barriers to the movement of data in the European Union. The second, and this is a kind of a novelty, is we are going to deal with ownership, interoperability, and access. I don't have the details of what this issue of ownership means. I haven't followed the discussion internally, and I have read the support, what we call the staff working documents, and there are not very many details about that, but it's good news that we deal with ownership. And finally, we are dealing with cloud computing, and particularly cloud for science. So I think that it becomes very clear after all the discussions of today that data is important. And it's a very precious resource for many reasons, because offers new economic and social opportunities, particularly when you combine them, that can be reused and when respecting the rules, particularly related to privacy, can provide a lot of benefits. And in addition to that, for industry, may provide a lot of competitive advantage, provided that they are delivered into the right way. So right. For the first time in July 2014, the European Commission published what we call an EU data strategy with a specific chapter on big data. I recommend you to read this document because it contains precious information about how we are going to go about the data in general, including the part of collection, processing, and also protection. So why the European Commission is mixing up with this issue of data? So first of all, because we focus particularly here on reuse, because we believe that there is, as I said, a business and economic opportunity. By the way, there are many figures that have been circulating about all the business that can be generated, could be generated by opening up the data. My personal opinion is a number of data sets had to be released simply because they are paid by taxpayer money. It's as simple as that, and they have the right to have it. So should be an exception that we don't release them, and that should be justified. But apart from that, there is a business case there. Whether that's going to be 140 billion or 110, like apparently the OECD is going to say, is only if the ideal conditions were met. We don't know, but we know certainly that it's better to have this data for reusability than not having them. Second is because we can deal better with societal challenges. I am sure that data are going to be fundamental if we want to sustain the health system in the future, and data are going to save lives. It's as simple as that. And the third thing is, of course, scientists need data for their work. Need data, and I will speak about that later, that have to be properly organized and properly tracked so that they are really useful. So, the Commission did a communication in 2011 and proposed a number of actions that are being completed just now. So, first of all, strategy about open data. The second was the revision of the Public Sector Information Directive. The third is the rules that, that are governing the way we release our data. So basically, I call that eating our own dog food. And our philosophy is very simple. We are going to release everything with very few exceptions that are related to intellectual property rights from us or from somebody else, and issues related to access to specific documents, probably because of reason of security, confidentiality, or privacy. So very little restrictions. And we are not going to put any other kind of a restriction into the reuse of the information, neither for the public sector, nor for the private sector. So there was a directive on public sector information, and we have proposed a revision, was approved by the legislative power, Parliament, repeat, and Council. And in principle, we believe that everything that is accessible should be made available for reuse. The second, we have clarified the issue of charges. So it means that charges are going to be limited to marginal cost and have to be duly justified. And the third thing is the cultural part was not included into the previous directive, now is going to be included. And please, machine readable, please. Of course, as usual, it takes about 2 years from the moment the directives are approved until they are implemented or transposed, as we call it, in national legislation. So in the middle, member states said, okay, but we need clarification. So we issued the clarification back in 2014. The transposition process is going ahead. When I gave a conference in Brasilia about open data, they told me that there were only 3 member states that have approved, have transposed the directive, but many were about to complete the process. The deadline is July 2015. I don't think we are going to kill anybody if that goes a little bit later, but the important thing is that that has to be transposed. Otherwise, it's a kind of infringement. I want to clarify again something, because we are here on the issue of data ownership. The Public Sector Information Directive deals with reusability, but there is something related to ownership, because into the clarifications we included the issue of licenses, as we include the clarification on how the cost of dissemination that are going to be charged eventually should be calculated. And of course, into the recommendation is if you do not use a license, use a notice. If by law you need to use a license, use an open public license, please. So this is not something that where the European Union is isolated. It's an international kind of issue. And in the G8, you see the very important people there that we are discussing about open data or closed data. I don't know. But it was decided that the orientation should be open data by default. So to complete that, they said, okay, we are going to be more specific. So they propose a charter. So first one is the most important message by default. The second is quality, quantity, and timely, please. Then is do it in such a way that everybody can use it without any kind of administrative barrier. So, and in open formats. And then, so governance. It's important, transparency, accountability. So it's, and of course, innovation. So there were six commitments to be made. So core databases, our commitments, core data sets, so budget, election, statistics, publish at our level. I will tell you how, on the open data portal, and promoting to the member states, of course, and with a number of supporting activities. Just do not publish and then forget about that. We are creating infrastructure and we are supporting that with the program funds. And then, of course, share best practices as usual. So, how are things in Europe? 30 countries are publishing data through national portals. That is going well also at regional and local level. And apart from that, other institutions have progressed as well, international institutions such as the World Bank and the United Nations that own very important data sets. So we are all together in this adventure. So we decided to publish data. We needed a portal. I know this portal very good because I was the one in charge of the development of the pilot of this portal. And by the way, we did it in close collaboration with the UK government that was a front runner at the time, and we reused a big part of their software. So in 2 months, we could have a good prototype up and running that was given to the contractor to build the current portal that is managed by the publication office. And we opened it up in 2012. We have been working on a pan-European portal, and pan-European doesn't mean central. I will tell you later. And we have prepared everything to fund the activities related to open data, the open data infrastructure through the Connecting Europe facility for the period 2014-2020 that correspond to the multi-annual financial framework. So this is the European Commission Open Portal, as I said, managed by the Publication Office. We have more than 6,000 data sets, and we have 40 data providers, either Directorate Generals in the European Commission or a number of agencies. I think it's nice, and for those who are really interested, they could find interesting, important data sets that are there, and is increasing and being updated on a permanent basis. By the way, the portal itself contains very little information. It's linked to the thematic portals that have been, some of them, functioning already for some time. For instance, Eurostat, that is the statistical office of the European Union, have been running a portal with open data since already 10 years. So we are linking to that. What we are doing is harmonizing all the metadata in order to have a kind of a common approach to the delivery. Since 2013, as I said, we are running a pilot of the Pan-European data portal. Here again, we are not going to collect all the information and put it central. What we are going to do is we are going to federate the national portals that are in every member state or anywhere else, by the way, so everybody can subscribe. We have already 46,000 reference data sets from 14 countries, what is quite an accomplishment taken into account that is only pilot. So it is planned to release data into production on the 1st of January 2016. So we want to build some kind of infrastructure to facilitate. It's a part of our commitment to the G8 to facilitate the use and dissemination of open data sets. And we are doing that, offering as well kind of multilingual facilities. We are going to use specific components of the Connecting Europe facility that are dealing with multilingualism, so that the portal can be interrogated. So it might be a single point of single point of contact for those who wanted to access data sets wherever in Europe. They could do in their own language, and the data sets would be identified. A completely different thing is whether the data set itself is multilingual or not. That depends on the provider of the data set. But as such, in my opinion, is already a very good kind of feature and approach. we are now producing the links into the infrastructure, and we are also creating tools that are going to facilitate the manipulation of the data sets. So I have seen wonderful visualization tools that can be used out of the box immediately with a number of data sets, and I think they are useful for those who are going to start playing with the data. And what we have done is a lot of work through a program I know well because I was the one creating it. I was the interoperability solution for public administration programs, and they have been working particularly on semantic standards for open data portals. It's the DCAT kind of approach. So I spoke about open data. Now I'm going to go to a subject where I am a little bit less familiar, is this issue of publicly funded research data and publication. So what is our objective? At member state level and at European level, open access, open science. And we believe that there are benefits on that, more efficient use, economic growth, and access for everybody. And we want that to crystallize. So that's why we are involved in this part, and we are pushing forward with our means. So our broader policy context is open science. I'm not going to speak about what this term means here in such a research-oriented university, because you all know, and I know because of the environment and what I have been able to learn for the last 8 months here, that this is really an open science environment. I can certify it. So now about publications. Open access. So I'm sure that there are many people in research here, so they know what it means working in a specific project, what are the mandates, what has to be published, and how all that has to be put in place through the green or gold open access. I'm not going to enter into this specific area. I have been, it's new for me, and in speaking to some of you here in the room, I understood that there is not only one green and there is not only one yellow. So there are, palettes of green. But basically is, okay, something has to be paid for processing that, so that the main goal of, of online access at no charge by the user. So somebody will have to pay something. So you pay in one way with a green, and you pay in another way with a gold. It looks at that gold allows you to have that immediately. So you pay the fee to the publication, and green, you may have to accept a temporary restriction on the publication that we have estimated very precisely in the general kind of subject and in social science and humanities. So the commitment that we want in Horizon 2020, that is our research and innovation program, is, okay, you have to deposit somewhere in a repository a peer-reviewed publication with the results. And is a machine-readable copy, and you may delay the publication because of this kind of green open access approach, but will be of 6 months or 12 months maximum in the case of social science and humanities. So we would like also that you also deposit the data that is related to your research. And we also want to make that searchable. So please identify that properly and open it up so that people can easily search for your research paper and eventually for your data. What happens, and speaking to Valerie, apparently not everybody knows that we fund research projects, but sometimes the publications are release after the grant has finished. So we have created a specific fund so that on request you can be given a grant in order to publish up to 3 publications. In the case of the framework program 7, that was the one before, with specific license, in any case a public and open license, with a limit for the funding, and we intend not to support hybrid journals, but as I said, one has to apply for the fund. But I think this is good as a push forward to open access the publication. So now on research data. As a pilot, we have started in Horizon 2020. We have identified a number of areas. You have then listed there from emerging technologies, infrastructures, ICT, climate, Europe in the changing world, etc., as areas for the pilot. So that people can opt in or opt out. I will speak about that. On the issue of releasing the data. But also, other areas can voluntarily participate. So, what are we requesting? So, you have to deposit a data management plan. Somebody spoke about this approach here as well, into a research data repository. And, of course, take the necessary measures so that people can access, mine, exploit, reuse, etc. And give information about the tools that were used to manipulate, during the research to manipulate the data. And if possible, please release the tools as well. So this is what we are asking. And those are the first results. So Horizon 2020 started on the 1st of January 2014. And out of the 3,054 proposals in the core areas. In the core areas, only 24% of the requests opted out. I want to clarify something. The fact that a project opts out, it doesn't mean that it's penalized into the selection process. In the same way, if a project opts in, it doesn't mean that it's favored into the selection process either. So basically 75% were in agreement, so opted in, and 24% and something opt out. And at the same time, in non-core areas, there were still 27% that wanted to participate into the exercise. What is pretty good. So now, we ask ourselves why they didn't want to participate. So, basically, nearly 70% of the opt-outs were for 3 reasons. One is, I don't have data to publish. The second is intellectual property rights. And the third one is privacy. Sounds familiar? Okay, so my final point. If we are going to ask for data, we need to provide infrastructure. So with Claude, we were speaking yesterday about what kind of infrastructures would be needed, what kind of infrastructures are there today. So what we really want is that that crystallizes and data are, as I said, essential for the progress of the humanity and for the progress of the research. But, particularly with the Internet of Things, we are going to have data everywhere. Will not be big data, will be a tsunami of data. So we need infrastructures that have to address a number of problems. So how to relate the data to each other. How we are going to govern all this mass of data and all the process. Somebody displayed this morning, I think it was the lady from Finland. All the process from generation to the usage of the data. So all data has to be done, but overall it has to be properly characterized, identified, etc. So how we can, in Europe, take the leadership in this area And some of all the experts propose that all this should proceed, as far as methodology is concerned, in the same way the internet grew and the IETF task force proceeded. So very much a bottom-up with a clear strategy top-down telling we want to get there. So we have particularly funded an initiative called the Research Data Alliance. That is funded basically in the first place by three entities. One is the Commonwealth Government of Australia through one of their organizations called the Australian National Data Service. The second is the European Commission, of course, and the third is the National Science Foundation here in the United States. But overall, the real funding is all the volunteers that are participating on a daily basis in this initiative. And that is the most valuable asset because they are scientists and is for them. I like the way they have been approaching. Yes, it was a little bit top-down for the strategy, bottom-up. So the task is so gigantic that if we take only a top-down approach, it's going to be impossible. So, low-hanging fruits. Do whatever you can with what you have in your hand and deliver so that you gain credibility. And then, at the same time, do the theoretical kind of background work so that you can apply the rules to the successive data sets that are going to come out of the work. And the principles that should inspire this infrastructure are discovery, accessibility, understanding, interpretation, managing, and finally using. There is a full unit in DG Connect devoted to the issue of not data infrastructure, but research infrastructure in general, from the networks to the high-power computers, etc., etc. And this is the unit that takes care of the grants and the organization behind this initiative. And with that, I have finished. Thank you. I think I was on time.
Excellent. So, questions?
So, thank you for a beautiful presentation. I looked at your open data website and I looked up tourism in the EU Open Data portal, and I got a bunch of reports, one of which went to data from 2013, and the other one was 2014, but the link was not up yet. So the data, one challenge I think is to figure out how to get data in real time so it's actionable. And so you're still talking about data sets, but not about data streams. Where is the EU policy in terms of real-time data streams, which is what we need to make real-time decisions?
You know, it's very interesting what you say, because the two situations. I read a book not very long ago by somebody called Joshua Troberer on open government data. And he argues that you are touching two things. One is timely data, I mean online data basically, and the other thing is that data are not from 10 years ago. So some kind of you have to update as you collect. So he thinks that having the full bunch of data for a number of applications is very important. So my opinion is that we should offer both. But there are data where offering the data set doesn't make any sense. So you may store the data sets, historical data sets for the meteorological data, but at the same time you need the data of today. So the policy is to offer both, as much as the systems that are behind the data are prepared to offer those interfaces. And it looks that we are still not there. But I think that we don't put any restriction. The portal infrastructure supports both. And as a matter of fact, there is a RESTful kind of interface for the data. If you don't find it, I can put you in touch with the guys who have developed that because I have seen it.
So we have a question in the
Paco, you and I have spoken quite a bit about these issues, so I realize also it's not actually ultimately your presentation, but just two small points with respect to the first part of it. At one point, there's a figure there, 15.000, and that needs to be changed. I think you meant 15,000. That's actually, yeah.
Or what?
It's on one of your slides.
Ah, okay. So
Okay.
sorry. That is part of my fault.
Yeah. The other one was actually strange in that you said that they're not going to have any role apart from licensing. But I mean, the critical part, they're not going to have any role in ownership apart from licensing, which is really with intellectual property the critical issue. So that would be my first question, what is meant by that? The second question would be, with respect to science, isn't there actually a strong case for the European Union to set up a bunch of open access journals of its own? Because the open access journals that over here, for example, require that people pay about $2,500 in order to preserve copyright. So even something like a Public Library of Science requires that payment. So isn't there a case, given the amount of money that the European Union is investing, to actually defray that cost for researchers?
Okay, so two things. Sorry for, you will tell me what is the mistake, because I'm going to make sure that the slides are accurate. The second thing, I probably, there was a misunderstanding on what I said. So I said that we haven't dealt with ownership up to now. It doesn't mean that we are not going to deal with ownership. The only thing related to ownership that we are dealing is that we are putting copyright, some kind of licensing into some data sets, even though we recommend for the public sector information that is a notice. But we are going to deal with ownership within the framework of the digital single market initiative. So it's not that we are going to neglect that. It's that we haven't studied that yet, and I wanted to clarify, that was my point, that the Public Sector Information Directive deals with reuse, doesn't deal with ownership. This is what I meant. The second thing about what you say, the European Union is a kind of political entity and a kind of partnership among 28 member states that try to be good for each other, and in addition to that contribute to the world peace and safety and goodwill. So if your question is whether the European Commission should be running this kind of business, I don't think so. The second thing is whether we should be funding that. We do as much as we can with everything we control. That is the Horizon 2020 projects. And our mission is that the information is free for the user. But at the same time, I have to say, and this is a personal opinion, also the work of collecting, organizing peer reviews, etc., all that has to be one way or the other remunerated at a reasonable price. So the thing is, it's not, and I have understood when I have tried to go a little bit in depth into this subject, that there were specific companies that were charging a lot for that. I was informed yesterday that INRIA is spending on a yearly basis 34 million euros. France. Well, France altogether 34 million euros in terms of subscription, but you can clarify.
Yes, just for one publisher, which is...
just for one publisher. So
okay.
The question is an issue of fairness. Is that fair for the work that is being done? So, tricky question. But I don't think we are going to run that shop.
We have reached the time, so one last question, if someone is willing to. Yes, final.
Okay, hi, I'm Antti from Finland. I'm interested in, you mentioned very much about infrastructure in open data, and then there is the part of private data, personal data, we have been discussing today quite a lot. And in the open science, it's quite tricky, the contradiction that many relevant science is done on personal data, and it comes quite a black box, then there is some article based on some data, and you just have to believe it because it's made on personal data. Are there any approaches making reproducible science around personal data that you know of?
I'm not a specialist in this matter. I don't think we have that in place. Just as a point of clarification, in the first part of my talk, I was speaking about basically public sector information data, and then the second part is about scientific data. And in public sector information data, the data set cannot have any kind of private information. So this is the only restriction we are putting there. On the other part is something we are piloting now, and is part also of the study that is being done and put in place by the Research Data Alliance based on the experience that we are having on the Horizon 2020. But I couldn't tell you how we are going to deal with the personal data sets. We want to pay for the infrastructure, basically. So data, the data, and then how all data, the governance of all those data, this is something to be determined nearly at sector level.
Okay. Maybe if anyone else has any ideas on this, I'm open for discussions.
Okay. So thank you again.
Thank you.